wouldn't be able to ask a question, but you could view it, and it'll still be there after today, so you can view this recording. So the cameras are basically on the speaker. It's not on you. So for that reason, we're going to ask that you please hold your questions to the end. If you need to write them down to save them to the end, we will get to everybody's question. But then at the end, Francisco will repeat your question so that he's saying it in the microphone, and then he'll answer your questions. So the workshop will end promptly at 3 o'clock. And if you have any questions after that, we will stay in the room to answer questions at 3 o'clock because the recording will stop at 3 o'clock. So myself, Francisco, and we actually have another certification officer here, Sonia Larkin. We'll have plenty of people available to answer your questions at the end. So again, I say thank you for being here today. I'm going to turn it over to Francisco. He is actually a certification officer. He actually does audits for applications. Ma'am, can you sign in, please, and just take your handouts? I just want you to have a handout so when you sit down, you can follow along with the presentation. So I am going to turn it over to Francisco now. Thank you for coming. And I will be here at the end, and I'll pick up your evaluations.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. Again, this is going to be a workshop on how to become certified with the City of Chicago. We'll get started. Just a quick department overview, who we are. The Department of Procurement Services, contracting authority for procurement of goods and services for the City of Chicago. We work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing and communicating and enforcing superior business practices. What we do, we contract over $2 billion of goods and services annually, the City of Chicago does. We accept new applications for certification. We accept annual recertifications, which are called no-change affidavits. We accept 5-year recertifications of your current certifications. Continuing eligibility affidavits is something that's currently changing, so we're not going to talk about that too much. What we do, we contract compliance with negotiated contractual MWDBE participation goals, set standards for contract participation goals of MWBE as well as DBE and ACDBE. We assist vendors through our website at thecityofchicago.org/procurement and chicago.mwdbe.com. What this means is anytime we have a contract, we have specific goals on those contracts. We want primes to utilize minority, women, and disadvantaged owned companies. That way we're assuring that everybody in the city is having a fair opportunity to get some intake or some participation in all these contracts. We have 5 types of certification. We have the MBE, which is minority-owned business enterprise, WBE, women-owned business enterprise. BEPD is a business owned by people with disabilities. DBE, which is a disadvantaged business enterprise. ACDBE, which is an airport concessions disadvantaged business enterprise. Now, out of these 5, we can classify these into 2 groups, which would be local programs and federal programs. The difference between these two, the local programs are ruled by local regulations, City of Chicago regulations. The federal programs are regulated by the Department of Transportation. The federal programs are the DBE and ACDBE programs. Benefits of certification, as I discussed this a little bit earlier. To provide visibility, once certified, your firm is listed in our city directory, so if primes are looking for a firm that conducts a certain type of work, they can go into our website and they can find you there. There are minority, women, and disadvantaged person goals in every City of Chicago well, let me rephrase that, in most City of Chicago projects, as well as projects offered by our sister agencies, which would include water reclamation, CPS, all of those other organizations. Continued on the benefits of certification. The City of Chicago has a target market program which provides exclusive bidding to certified minority and women-owned businesses enterprise. This allows certified businesses to take 100% of the pie because there is no subcontractor goals associated with this. So on certain projects, certain contracts that go out for bid, the City of Chicago tries to give this exclusively to our certified firms. These contracts vary in industries and vary in expertise. So everyone will definitely have an opportunity to bid on projects like this one. Do you qualify for this? So qualifying groups are African American, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, women, persons with disability, and other individuals who can prove social and economic disadvantage. What does that last one mean? That means that if you don't fall clearly into any of the first mentioned, you can submit a request to go through a hearing to see if you are indeed certified, and this goes through our affirmative action board. And then if they decide that you are indeed disadvantaged, then you would qualify for the program. Do you qualify? Continued on this. Now, we do have local businesses. We do have restrictions on where your business is located. So for our local programs, principal place of business, the majority of your full-time workers have to be working within the 6-county region, which is Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, or Will County. For the DBE program, it could be anywhere in the state of Illinois. Just to be clear, there are some firms that have large operations. So let's say that you have 100 employees. Out of those 100 employees, 20 work in Chicago, which is Cook County, and 80 of them work in Springfield, which is outside of our 6-county region. In that instance, a firm like that would not be certifiable. It has to be the majority of your, and the principal, the majority of your business has to be conducted within this 6-county region. Now with the DB, ACDB, which is the federal program, you could be anywhere in the state of Illinois. The good thing about the federal program, if you're seeking to look for contracts in a different state, you would have to be certified through that state. But in order to be certified through a different state, you first have to be certified through your home state. So just so you guys know that. First certified through your home state, then you can try to obtain certification in any other state. And with that being said, we have people who come to us to get certified with the state of Illinois who are already certified at their own state. 51% of the company has to be owned, controlled, and managed by the disadvantaged group, whether it's a minority, woman, persons with disability, or socially or economically disadvantaged individual. So a lot of people go into business with partners, and that's normal, and that's okay. But for the purposes of certification, it must be clear that the person that is in control of the firm is the person who is presumed to be disadvantaged, a minority or a woman. This is very important. A lot of times we have a lot of firms that call us and tell us, well, our company is owned by a minority person. So, you know, we look at the certification application and we realize that, yes, it is owned by a minority person, but the minority person is retired and they live in Florida. So the firm is not controlled or managed by this person anymore because they've already set other people in charge and in place. I mean, there is instances where that can be certifiable, but that's just an example of, it's not just ownership, it's also control and management it's very, very important that you guys keep that in mind when applying for certification. Now, we do have some gross receipt standards. We want every business in the city of Chicago to become an established business. We want you guys to be very successful and earn millions and millions and millions of dollars in gross receipts. But unfortunately, for certification purposes, we cannot certify firms who exceed SBA standards for construction firms and 37.3 for non-construction firms. So let me go into detail for this. And this applies to the M and WBE. If you're a construction firm, you're going to be certified in specific codes. If your average gross receipts over 5 years exceeds those SBA standards, you are what will become an established business. You don't lose your certification, you just go into a graduation phase that we can discuss a little bit later on. Now, if you're a non-construction firm, the city of Chicago has decided that we're not going to use SBA standards. We're going to use a flat 37.3 million average over 3 years as a determination whether you are an established business or not. For DBE, the standard is SBA size or 22.4 million, whichever is higher. ACDBE, there is a flat gross receipt standard, which is 52.47. Some exceptions do exist, but they're very, very, very minimal. The application process. This is the main question that we always get. So what happens when you apply? First and foremost, the most important thing when to begin this process is we have to receive your application, whether it's in hard copy or electronically. Me personally, I will recommend over and over to do it electronically. Why? Because you know exactly what you submitted. The system will not let you continue until you've submitted all the required documents. If you submit a hard copy, sometimes you might have forgotten to put something in, or you thought that you put this in, but instead you put that in. So I always recommend that you do it electronically. It's just a lot easier. And in order to do it electronically, you just go to chicagomwdbe.com. There is a $250 fee when you apply for the minority, woman, or BEPD programs. Oh, I'm sorry, not BEPD. BEPD is free. For a minority and woman-owned business enterprise, you do have to pay a $250 fee. The fee must be paid in money order, cashier's check, or certified check. No personal checks, no company checks. We will not accept it. An application is not considered to be fully submitted until we do receive that fee as well. So that's correct. Correct. So the way that you do that, whenever you submit an application, the question was, how do you tie the check to the application? Once you mail in the check, you'll have a piece of paper that you're going to include it in the envelope, and we'll be able to identify that what application that check belongs to. Now, the DBE and ACDBE and BEPD are free of charge. There's no charge for them. And be sure to submit all the documentation that we need. The more information that is missing, the longer the process is going to take. It's very, very important that you submit everything that is needed. What type of stuff do we need? We need contact information. It may sound funny, but we sometimes receive applications where the contact information is wrong, so we're never able to get a hold of the people who are seeking certification. Type of certification that you are seeking. There's another thing that's very important, especially for people who are applying for minority and woman-owned business enterprise. Sometimes they'll check one, but they won't check the other. It's the same fee. It's a $250 fee regardless of what you're applying for. so it doesn't double in any way, shape, or form. BEPD requires you to submit a Schedule G. It's going to ask for ownership information. How did you start this firm? What did you pay? What were the reasons that you wanted to start your firm? Employee information. How many employees do you have? How many managers do you have? What do they do? It's going to ask for facility information. Where are you? Are you sharing your space with someone else? Do you have a big warehouse and that's where you conduct your business? This is all very important information. Financials. Your financial statements, tax information, all the licenses, if applicable. If you're a Mason, there's a Mason's license that you would have to submit with this. I'll get that at the end. So what we need from you, so this is more stuff. You need to demonstrate that you have the experience to run a business like this. How do you demonstrate this? With a resume, with a professional, any professional association you're with, listing of equipment that you own or equipment that you lease, showing us proof of all of this information. Contract information. Have you done this work in the past? Provide us the contract with all the schedules. Make sure that you guys got paid. It proves that you guys are worthy of doing this type of job or at least capable of it. Try to be as recent as possible. Don't submit something that happened 10 years ago. Try to stay as recent as possible. Submit all the invoices you sent to the prime contractors or to the customer, all the purchase orders. All of this information is going to show that, again, you are capable of doing the job that you are seeking certification. Ownership information, again, sole proprietors. Typically owned by one person and has no legal existence apart from the person themselves. You must submit all assumed names, an assumed name certificate. So there's always going to be a way to demonstrate that you are a legal entity, whether it's a sole proprietor or not. The general partnership, if it's two of you guys together, we need that partnership agreement to continue. If you're a limited liability corporation or a limited partner, assumed name certificate or certificate of limited partnership. So pretty much with this, you're able to see that we need just proof that all of this is a legal entity. This is, again, important. If you're a corporation is treated as an entity completely separate from its shareholders. It allows others to invest in business without being liable for the debts of the business. Is the firm in good standing? Especially for corporations, this is a big problem. Sometimes they fail to stay in good standings with the state of Illinois. If you're not in good standings with the state of Illinois, you are not certifiable. We do allow you and give you time to fix the issues, but it is something that needs to happen in order. You have to be in good standings in order to be certified. You have to have your articles of incorporation, bylaws, copies of all stock certificate, all of your minutes. You have to submit those. LLC, a limited liability corporation, you would be able to provide an operating agreement between you and your partners. A lot of times we do have single member LLCs that apply. You don't necessarily need to provide an operating agreement, but it's always better to have one. It really is. And then, make sure that it's clear there who the managing partner or members are and things like that. Okay, so now we're going to go into industries. So there's a lot of industries that people can be certified in. Pretty much any. But again, it's a business decision whether you guys believe that the certification is going to help you or not. I've had people who've called me and they've told me about their business, and I've asked them, well, do you think that you'll be able to contribute to a city contract? They said no, but there is a lot of private companies that have supplier diversity goals as well. I'm like, perfect. So that's a business decision that everybody has to make, right? But some industries they have different rules that we follow. So for instance, suppliers. A supplier must be a regular dealer, which is a firm that owns, operates, or maintains a store, warehouse, or any other establishment in which materials, supplies, articles, or equipment are bought, kept in stock, and regularly sold or leased to the public in the usual course of business. So this is pretty much telling you, if you're going to be a supplier, you have to follow this definition. You have to have a stock of inventory that you're selling on a regular basis. Now we're going to talk about distributors. Firms operating as a distributor are identified as having a direct relationship with a manufacturer to distribute its goods and products within a specified territory or region. The goods and/or products are not available or sold to the general public. Brokers. A firm acting as a broker are not eligible for certification as an MBE or WBE. That's why those first two definitions were so important. A person or entity that fills order by purchasing or receiving supplies from a third-party supplier rather than its own existing inventory, and provides no substantial service other than acting as a conduit between his or her supplier and his or her customers as a broker. Very, very, very important if you're a supplier. We'll cover the questions at the end. Is that I'll make a note of it and then I'll follow up. After applications are submitted, the process can take between 60 to 90 days from the date that we receive all documents. Absolutely every document, every piece of document. Your application is checked to make sure we have all documents. Documents are thoroughly audited. You may receive a site visit. If approved, your certification is valid for 5 years. So here we're talking about 60 to 90 days from the day that we receive all documents. So let's put this into perspective. You guys submitted your electronic copy online, and now that you submitted your electronic copy online, you send in your check. We receive the check. We match both your application to the check. We check that all of your documents are there, or at least the minimum required documents are there. We receive it. Now, this is all in our intake department. How long will that take? It depends. It depends on how many applications are pending. Depends on all of that. After that, we have we have to wait for your application to be given to a certification officer. Then the certification officer will begin the review. The certification officer may require more information, but that's all depending on case-by-case basis. There is what's called an expedited process or a recognition of an outside certification. And this could be a little bit misleading because of the way that it is expedited process. It really isn't an expedited process. The only difference between this and a regular application is that we require less documents. And the reason why we require less documents is because you have been already certified through the Women's Business Development Center or the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your process is going to go longer, or that instead of taking 90 days, it's going to take 30 days. That's not what it means. It just means that you're going to have to submit less information, because we're trusting that these other agencies have already done a thorough review, and we have an agreement with them. Maintaining certification. Earlier, I talked about briefly talked about no change affidavits. This is very, 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 very important when you're certified. Once you're certified, people get a 5-year letter saying that you're certified for 5 years. And they're like, okay, well, for 5 years, I don't have to do anything. It's not the case. Because sometimes we read the first paragraph and we forget to read the rest of the letter, right? Because we're excited, we're already certified. It is very important that every year you submit a no change affidavit. What this is telling us is that there has been no changes to your certification since the last time you submitted all your paperwork. Now, it could be a small change, like an address change. You have to let us know within 10 days. It could be, you know what, I can't do this by myself. I need to raise capital. I'm going to sell 10% of my company to someone that's going to be invested into the firm. You need to let us know of that. I need to hire a new director because he's very well connected in the industry and he's going to bring me a ton of business. We need to know about that. The reason why we need to know about that is we need to make sure that you guys are still within the guidelines of the program. If you don't let us know about that and we find out that there is something that's not within the guidelines, you can lose your certification. So that's why it's better to just let us know. Now, another reason why it's so important that you submit a no change affidavit, and this happens all the time, every single day. We get a vendor call us and say, I'm trying to get in on a contract, but the prime is telling me that I'm not certified. I'm like, well, you are certified, you're just not up to date. Well, why not? I'm like, because for the past 3 years, you haven't submitted a no change affidavit. Well, if I submit one today, well, can you do it today? I'm like, unfortunately, that's not how it works. We need to also have respect for the people who are submitting everything on time. We can't just drop everything we're doing to help. We do our best, and we really do. We're not trying to take any opportunities away from anyone. But what I'm trying to say here, it's very important that you guys just do it on time. Do it on time, submit it every year. Very, very, very important. And all vendors must recertify after 5 years, which is also something that happens to us all the time. The 5 years are up, they submit a no change affidavit, then they call us a year and a half later and said, well, I submitted a no change affidavit. I'm like, well, you were supposed to submit a recertification. And now we're talking about now a recertification takes a lot longer to review than a no change affidavit. So this is important. It's always important to know the status of your certification. Otherwise, we don't want you guys to fall into one of those situations when that an opportunity comes up and you can't do it because you haven't kept up with your certification. Okay? Okay, so expansion of service. So an expansion of service, just to give you a quick overview of an expansion of service. You submit your application and you get certified in these NACES codes. Let's say that you're a construction firm and you got certified as a carpenter and as a mason and as an electrician. Well, now you got your plumber's license. Now you can be a plumber. So now you want to add the plumbing NACES code to your certification. You would do what's called an expansion request. You would submit your request on company letterhead, include all added categories for the NACES codes, which stands for North American Industry Classification System. Then you would include all the required licenses, copies of future or present contracts, and any needed insurance. So once so that's just telling you that if you want to expand or add any codes during while you're certified, you can do that. the Department of Procurement um, doesn't handle all contracts within um, the city of Chicago. There's other sister agencies that do their own procurement, and these are like these are some of them, which is Chicago Public Schools, Chicago Park District, Public Building Commission, Chicago Housing Authority, and these are their phone numbers, but they all accept our certification, and they also have these goals in mind so that you guys can participate in these public funds. Avoid the top 10 reasons applications are denied. We talked about ownership earlier. Questionable ownership and control. Again, hey, Francisco, I have my buddy who's a non-qualifying member. Francisco, let's open up a company. What kind of company? A plumbing company. Well, I don't know nothing about plumbing. Don't worry about it. Just, you're going to be the owner. The owner now. He's like, oh, we're going to apply for minority-owned business because you're the owner of this company, right? All right, let's do it. And then when they're doing the application process, when they're reviewing my application, they say, Francisco, you've never done plumbing. I'm like, yeah, so, but I'm the owner of this company. Denied. Right? You have to know what you're doing whenever you're applying for certification. Unclear description of critical functions and who is responsible. So as the owner of a company, you have to know who is responsible for every aspect. It's that simple. And if you're unclear or you don't know, that's a big flag, and it could be causes for denial. Company cannot substantiate where the startup funds came from. We talked about that earlier too. It's very important to keep records of this and to show that you indeed are the person who started the company, or you indeed are the person who bought this company outright. A lot of times, again, you have people who are influenced by non-qualifying members given money and saying, here, buy that company. It doesn't work that way. Outside secondary employment takes the majority of the person who is seeking certification. So there is times where you have a startup company, right? And you need to feed the family, so you need to have your 9-to-5 job. That may be a different story, but it's the burden's on you to explain why. But if I start a plumbing company and then I work for the biggest plumbing company in Chicago full time, that's questionable. So if you work for the biggest company in Chicago that does plumbing, how can you be a plumber yourself on the side? Does that make sense? So that's a big no-no. And the company is not located in the 6-county region, which we touched on that. Point of contact did not respond to requests for information in a timely manner. What does that mean? What that means is that when a certification officer is reviewing your file, we may need additional information, as I spoke about earlier. If we need information, we're going to send you what we call an RFI, which is a request for information. This will be very clear on what we need, has all of our contact information, so you can reach out to us if you have any questions regarding this request for information. But we do give you a deadline. If you don't reply within that deadline, we send you a second RFI. If you don't respond within that one, some officers will send you another one. Others will be strictly by the book. But the thing is, if you don't respond within those times, that's cause for closing out your application and losing your certification. Inconsistencies with applicant firm name among various documents. So if I'm Francisco Nunez Incorporated and I'm trying to get certified as Francisco Nunez Incorporated, but then I'm sending out documents for Francisco Nunez LLC, it's not going to work. It's a big red flag, and 95% of the time you're going to, well, 100% of the time you'll be denied on that type of inconsistency. Obviously, you get the opportunity to explain what's going on here. It could be simple. You're moving from being incorporated to LLC, and that happens a lot too. So, there's always you guys always will have an opportunity to explain what's going on. Problem with contracts missing, incomplete, not signed, or executed by qualifying owners, or no corresponding proof of payments, things like that. What that means, it's, as the owner of a firm, 95% of the time, especially smaller firms, the owner is going to be the one executing any type of contract with any contractor or any other outside affiliate, whoever you do business with. It's important that you can demonstrate that you're in control of this process. Okay? Required documents are not attached, or no explanation is given on why the documents are not available. Keep that in mind for later when we answer the question that he asked: how long does the business have to be in service in order to be certified? So if the document's not available, give a good explanation, and it is what it is. 3 years of tax returns were not submitted, signed as required. For construction firms, that will be 5 years. Tax information is very, very important, just like everything else, and everything I'm telling you is very, very important. So I'll keep repeating it. Hopefully it doesn't go in one ear and out the other. Where to go for help? You guys can always come visit us here in room 806. You can call our general line number, 312-744-4900. If you guys want my card, I can give you my card after this, and it have my direct line, my email address. There's plenty of ways to reach out for help, and we're here to do that. I want you guys to understand that. The purpose of these workshops are to steer you in the right direction, so that way when you guys are doing the application, you guys are doing it correctly, and you guys are not wasting your time. We know that in the business world, time is money, right? They say, and we don't want to take that time away from you because we don't have that much money. All right, so now we have about 15 minutes for questions, and we'll start with your question.
As I was reviewing the application, and as you were explaining over there, if there's some documentation that needs to be like 8 years old or 5 years old, my question is, how long does the business or the firm needs to be in business in order to qualify for certification?
The question is, how long does a business have to be in business in order to be certified? You can be certified from the beginning. It is important. So, for instance, if I go to the Secretary of State today and incorporate, and I have my bylaws, I have my minutes, I have my stock certificates, I can technically be certified at that moment. But, if you do have minutes, well, I'm sorry, you wouldn't have minutes. You're right. Yeah, right. You're right. All right. So you can be certified, but if I'm trying to be certified as a underground tunnel excavator, I also need the equipment to do the job, right? So that's where it's very important that you understand. You don't have to have 3 years of tax returns because you're new, but you do have to have everything necessary to do the job. So just keep that in mind. Okay? Your question now, sir?
Kind of piggyback on this question now. If you're a new organization, I don't know what would you say would be the minimum, how long a person would
So the question is, how long do you really have to be in business in order to be certified? Well, again, it all depends on the industry standards. You know, it could be the same day. So if I'm a consultant and I want to be a general management consultant, and I have an MBA from DePaul University, and I have a piece of paper and a pen, a telephone, so now I can be a consultant at that exact moment. But if I want to be a plumber and I've never had any plumbing experience, then it's kind of hard to prove that I'm a plumber, even though that's what I want to do. So it all depends on the industry more than anything. It's very important.
Who makes those discretionary,
Who makes those who makes the determinations? The determinations are made by the certification officer, but it's not a given. So, for instance, if a certification officer determines that you are not eligible for the program, that does not mean that you are automatically denied. You get what's called a preliminary denial first. During this preliminary denial, you have the opportunity to refute whatever's being said, or the logic that's being used, or the facts that are being used to deny your certification. If you're successful with that, then you are granted certification. That would go through a third-party contractor. The city will remove themselves from that determination. Someone else will make that determination whether you provided sufficient evidence to overturn the preliminary denial.
Ms. Nunez, is there a guide that we can access to see a completed product of an application?
The question is there a guide to see the completed product of an application? There is not. But there's the help text. The help text is kind of common questions that are given, that are asked, and that's why it's so important here. I gave you a lot of information here that will guide you on how to complete your application. But no, we do not have like this is a perfect application. Follow this. No, we don't have nothing like that. Go ahead, sir.
a couple of questions. One, you mentioned contract goals for minority and disadvantaged and women-owned businesses. Do they have those same type of goals for businesses owned by people with disabilities?
The question is, do we have the same contract goals for BEPD, business enterprise managed by person with disability, as we do for minority and women-owned businesses? I don't work in the contract department, but I can definitely give you the information for someone in contracts that would probably be able to answer that question a little bit better.
Second question, if someone certifies initially as a BEPD, well, let me ask you this, if they want to certify as both BEPD and minority, is there a fee given that BEPD is free?
Yes. The question is, if we are being certified as a BEPD, which has no fee, and then you're trying to be certified as an MBE as well, yes, there is a fee. Because even if you're trying to be certified as an MBE and DBE at the same time, you still have to pay the $250 fee. Okay.
So you were mentioning that you have to send the no change information. Now, is that our responsibility, or is there something that's sent out annually that says,
The question is, in reference to the no change affidavit, is it the responsibility of the applicant firm to send it every year, or is there an alert that's sent out to remind business owners about it? Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the business to submit a no change affidavit. The city of Chicago has set up a system that will notify the owners of the firms 60 days prior to them having to submit a no change affidavit as a reminder. We know that it gets busy and we know that there's a lot of things going on. But it is ultimately the responsibility of the business owner to submit this information.
So the application fee is $250. From my understanding, it's good through the 90 days. If I get a response that I need a request for further information, and I don't respond within the second or the third period, and I come back maybe a month later, would I then have to reapply and submit an additional $250?
Okay, so the question is, there is a fee, the $250 fee that is submitted initially when an application. The question leads to if a firm does not respond to requests for information in a timely manner and they close their application, would they have to resubmit a new application and pay the $250 fee? The answer is yes, you do. You do have to pay it all over again. We give you plenty of time. And just remember this, if the best advice that I can give you is if you get an RFI, and yes, answer it, but if you don't have the information or you have questions about it, call us. We're going to answer the phone. Maybe I give you an RFI and you have 15 days to respond, but what I'm asking you to do, you can't do for like 25 days. But you call me and say, hey, Francisco, man, I'm sorry. I can't get you this in 15 days. It's going to take me 25 days to do it. I'm going to say, like, no problem. Take your 25 days, and it's not a problem. I make a note of it in the system. I create a buzz for me. So then that way in 25 days, I'm going to call you and say, hey, well, I'm not necessarily going to call you, but I can call you and ask, hey, you haven't submitted this. What's going on? And you'll be like, oh, you know what? I totally forgot. But then, again, just answer them, call us, stay in communication with us. That's the best advice I can give you when it comes to becoming certified.
Going back to the application process, you suggested that you submit online, but given the fact that, let's say, the business doesn't have all the required documentation, such as taxes for 2 years, some of the documentation was like 5 years back and all that stuff. Is the system going to kick you out and say you can't submit the application because you don't have the documentation, and therefore we have to do it like a hard copy, or can we still do it online and do some kind of note saying that the business is not even here?
Okay. So the question is, when you're submitting an application online, the application online will not let you submit or proceed without providing necessary information. If you're a startup business and you don't have all the required information, the question is, what do you do then? What you are going to do is exactly what you suggested. You're going to, on a letterhead, you're going to write a brief statement stating that you're a new company and you only have 1 year of tax returns or 0 years. And you're going to upload that into that section. So when the reviewing officer brings all this information, they know that it's not that you did not submit the information, it's that you don't have it because it doesn't exist yet.
So in that case, you wouldn't want to see maybe a combination, maybe is what little information you have on the business and then the personal tax information?
So the question is, do you want to see a combination of both? If you don't have the information and the information that you have, is that the question?
Yeah, like if you're a startup business, obviously you only have a limited amount of tax information. So you
Right.
want to see that plus the personal information?
Right. Okay. So, something that we didn't cover here, which is, he's asking about personal information. Would we want to see the personal information to replace the business information? One thing that we didn't cover here is that we will need your personal income tax returns as well. So that's going to be a required document anyway. Your personal income tax returns are necessary for certification. And with that also, you will have to sign 4506Ts, believe. Yeah, 4506T, which gives us the authority to request transcripts from the IRS if need be. But, so any information that you have, you always want to submit it. It doesn't matter how much it is, submit all the information you have and the personal statements. Do you need a NACES code to be certified? So yes, we want you to tell us what you do. So you need to tell us what NACES codes you guys want. I know that sometimes we get applications where people just give us a brief description of what they do, but then we're determining what NACES codes apply to that. But then when you guys get your certification, you guys are going to be like, wait, hold on, I'm missing all these other NACES codes. That's why it's better if you just tell us what you want. That way, when we're doing our certification, we're certifying and doing our review and due diligence based on what you're requesting and nothing more.
Do you need us to submit a statement of expansion of services, say if you're a daycare provider, you want to add transportation services, and you have an LLC that with the ability to create series?
Okay, so the question is, would you need to create an expansion for, submit an expansion if you want to add a service on a series LLC? Right. Right. So what Victoria was saying in the back is that you only submit an expansion request if you are already certified and you're seeking another NACES code. But for series LLCs, a series LLC, every series is its own entity. So you cannot seek certification through your main LLC for a series because those are legally two separate entities. Unless you have a DBA. If you have an assumed name certificate that your business is assuming the name of your first series or second series, that's a little bit different. So anytime you want to do it on a series LLC, it gets a little tricky. So you have to make sure that you're using the same entity that's necessary. Does that answer your question? You said that she said she doesn't understand. So you said that you have a series LLC and you have a daycare, right? So you have a daycare and then on first series you have transportation, right?
Well, it's series is its own series. I mean, the LLC is its own name, and there's a series under it.
Right. Every series becomes its own legal entity. That's what I'm telling you. So it's a whole different company.
So I would have to just certify the LLC.
Correct. Yes.
Just tell them what services I provide under that.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
So I can't submit an expansion for service request for another series.
No, because you cannot submit an expansion request on every series because every series in its sense it's its own entity. It's a whole different company.
So when will you get certified?
You can seek to certify yes, you can. You can seek certification for different entities, correct.
So when would it be appropriate to submit an expansion of services? Give us an example.
Well, I'll give you an example. Well, let me give you an opinion. The question is, when would be a good time to submit an expansion? Technically, you shouldn't have to. When you're first applying for certification, you shouldn't even think about submitting an expansion because any code or any NACES code that you want, you should do it from the get-go. The only time you're going to submit an expansion is if you feel that, in every business you go through hoops and you go through one way and then the other, then you may realize like when 2 years down the road, you may realize, you know what, Destiny has pulled me this way, which is a completely different NACES code then that's when you realize that, that's when you should seek expansion. But in the beginning, there shouldn't even be a question about expansion, because you should just seek certification in everything and anything that you think you're going to be good at. We have time for one more question. I think you had it.
I was going to ask in terms of the taxes, how far back, personal taxes, if you don't have nothing for the company, how far back do you need to go for personal taxes provided?
The question is, how far back do you go on personal taxes for review? You go 3 years back on personal taxes for every type of certification. It'll be 3 years. And for construction, it could be up to 5, but it depends. Most of the times it's 3, but it could be up to 5 for construction.
And depending on your business, would that information be provided to you at the time when you're applying, or you have displayed separately?
So the question is, would you know that at the moment of application that you apply, or would you know that later? The easy answer to that is you would know that later, because the certification officer is the one who's going to determine that. That was the last question we had time for. If you have additional questions, we can meet after this, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Again, thank you for coming to today's workshop. Remember, all DPS workshops are now being live streamed at YouTube at Chicago DPS. If there are any more questions, we will stay after 3:30, and I will answer them. And have a great afternoon. Thank you.